Kaze and the Wild Mask is a 2D platformer developed by PixelHive. It's reminiscent of the old school platformers like Donkey Kong Country and Rayman, and it's supposed to be really difficult, but how hard can it be? Hi, my name is Avalon, and welcome to my reviews. I resent the current review scoring system, and basically any game under 8 out of 10 is bad, and everything else seems to get 8 or 9 anyway. So I came up with my own system, which I've put in the description, and I'll rate 10 categories out of 5. If I give it a 3, then it's as expected. 4 and 2 are good and poor, and 5 or 1 is perfection or complete failure. So for me, a game scoring 25 out of 50, it's an alright game. So let's get into this. It's a fresh coat of paint to the 2D platforms worlds. Kaze and the Wild Mask really takes the genre and makes it feel a lot more modern, without leaving the influences in the past. Much like the 2D platformers of the 90s, there is some real challenge. There's collectibles to find every level and new abilities to acquire throughout the game. Kaze splits these abilities into temporary masks, which means that when designing the game, the level designs have been built around which ability the player has available to them at any given time. For the most part, this is done pretty well, with the Eagle Mask, for example, giving you the ability to fly. Levels are based around weather challenges like snowstorms, winds, that sort of thing, and the Tiger Mask, which gives you dashes in the air just to add some more platforming challenge. The masks are used in the levels, the bonus rooms, and the boss fights, and talking of boss fights, it's pretty typical to this sort of genre. There's one boss at the end of each world. They focus around platforming, player control, and understanding the abilities you have available to you. It is interesting to gain and lose abilities throughout the game, but there's clear favoritism towards the Tiger Mask. Lots of levels focus on using it, there's a big section to it in the final boss fight, and it's a bit disappointing because some of the other masks seem to get pushed to the side. There's no boss fight focusing around the Shark Mask, there's no boss fight focusing around the Lizard Mask. I mean, there are sections in the final boss fight again, but there's nothing specific to each of those masks, which is a real missed opportunity. When you're not wearing these masks, Kaze controls like most 2D platformers. It's pretty simple. There's left, right, jump, duck, attack. Nothing sort of groundbreaking there, but it means that it's very comfortable for players who like platform games to pick up. If you're not new to platform games, don't worry though, the first stage is built as a tutorial. It gives you a safe place to practice jumping, and it teaches you to attack on the environment, which as of yet isn't hitting you back. There's no like death falls early on or anything to catch you out if you're not used to the game style. Frustratingly, only one key can be bound to one controller at a time, which means if you switch your gamepad during gameplay, you're going to have to keep messing with the controls. For example, I had a GameCube controller and a PlayStation 4 controller, and I had to remap these because it read the inputs differently depending on which controller was used. It was quite annoying to have to do it every time. There wasn't any way to sort of memorize it or anything like that. But that's really a personal gripe. I suppose the argument is don't change your controller whilst you're playing a video game, which, to be fair, is quite a valid argument. If you are struggling with the controls, there's also a casual mode which allows for a few more mistakes for anyone having a hard time, which is a nice addition. Despite the challenge being the reason that I bought the game, the difficulty wasn't so high. The core game definitely had a progressive difficulty, but it never reached a point where there was an obstacle you couldn't progress past after a couple of tries. The bosses were a good way to test your understanding of each of the masks, and the final tussle with Typhoon tested your mastery of those masks, even if it was only brief. I'm talking about the masks quite a lot, but they kind of are what makes this game what it is. I mean, it is in the title of the game, and they are kind of introduced in a progressive way. So you get the Eagle Mask first, which adds some verticality to your movement set and makes you contend with more environmental hazards such as thorns, wind, that sort of thing. The Shark Mask then builds on this four-directional movement and creates challenges using currents and other such water things. There's nothing too out there. The Tiger Mask gives you a dash and a climb, which, again, nothing new, but it was a welcome increase to the difficulty. And finally there's the Forgotten Mask, the Lizard Mask or the Dragon Mask. Officially it's Lizard, but dragons are cooler, so we're going to call it the Dragon Mask. It gives the player more aerial mobility with a double jump and a dive, and it causes the player to constantly run. It's a real jump up in difficulty and a really welcome addition to the game. Even if, like, on a few occasions it felt a bit like trial and error, because you don't know what's coming, or you don't know how projectiles are going to line up underneath you, it was still a really good bit of fun. If that jump in difficulty is too much, like I said earlier, there is a casual mode which allows for way more mistakes. It gives you 2 hits before deaths, and there's more hearts throughout the levels, so it's just a good bit of balance to people that are either new or struggling, or they just want a more casual playthrough. It does, however, affect the achievements you can unlock playing the game. Speaking of achievements, One huge area the game exceeds in is the visual appearance and the environments. It has multiple different environments utilizing completely different color palettes, enemy themes, enemy styles, environmental challenges, general platforming challenges. It's just brilliant, and the game really takes the pixel art style and runs with it. The attention to detail is really obvious in the animation. Kaze just looks great when she's moving, irrelevant as to which mask is worn. There's a trailing effect on the dragon mask which helps you feel really fast when it forces you to run, and the enemy's animation is just as tight with good telegraphing for what the enemy will be or is about to be doing. I would suggest that the environments don't all match up to the islands that they're part of. For example, there's toxic themed levels in Carrot Land despite having an island that is themed around toxic levels, but it's a minor point and it's something that I'll probably circle back around to. The backgrounds are absolutely incredible, and this is really highlighted in the desert levels. There's hot air balloons and there's little flickers of light in them. It's really beautiful, just little bits of attention to detail that really bring the world to life. It's the same with Typhoon Tussle. In the background there's lots going on, there's a good storm in the area. It's just really vibrant and really well animated. Speaking of backgrounds, the soundtrack feels like it's been specifically designed to be part of the environment's background. The music is just really well done. However, it definitely could have been a bit more defined. During my playthrough, I remember that I commented on the music a couple of times, but I can't remember any of the music whilst I script this review, which is a little bit disappointing. However, listening to the soundtrack again, it just confirms how beautiful it is. It's designed well and it matches the themes it's applied to. One thing I have no issue remembering, however, is the voice acting. The first boss, Mother Mona, has this bizarre laugh shriek effect thing that she does. It feels really out of place, but it definitely gets less noticeable throughout the game, with other bosses and enemies having more fitting voice characters. The other sound effects seem pretty decent. The jumping and landing have clear audio cues, the changing weather, waters, it's all very well done. There's only one thing that I had a real problem with. There's a level with rising poison and there's a sound cue to show that it's starting to rise, but there's no real way to know that's what it's telling you. There's nothing that hints at it. I know now in hindsight that there's also some visual cues to this with volcanoes going on in the background, but the particular level is just so green. Everything's green, and I like green, and there's just too much green. It's so monochromatic that you might not notice that visual change. All in all, the sound was pretty decent, just decent, nothing special about it, it just is what it is. It does a good job of building out the environment. The trend of kind of being pushed towards the background and just building out an environment applies to the story of the game too. The opening cutscene gives a general idea of your friend slash brother slash lover Hogo touching a magical staff. It's really unclear at the time, but apparently he's just a friend. Anyway, he gets trapped into a ring and then your character goes out on their journey to free them. It's very unclear as to why they're trapped or what the plan to free them is, and the story is kind of told through these scrolls that you get for collecting one of the collectibles as you play through the game. That was a lot of saying collecting in one sentence there. And these scrolls, they tell you about the story that's happened before the game, a couple of major events that have happened in the past for the bunny people. Like I said, you get them for collecting things in the level, so this particular one is for collecting each of the letters in Kaze's name, so K-A-Z-N-E. And I kind of thought they were like bonus art as I went through, so I wanted to look at them all at the end. But they chronicle the events leading up to the game. Basically, the bunnies do some training, the wise bunny passes the staff to Hogo, but then the evil bunny, Typhoon, wants the staff, so she steals it, and then Hogo goes to try and get it back, and then he gets trapped in a ring. I don't really know what happens in between that, where the magic for the ring comes from, but who cares. The masters and the wise bunnies, they give their souls to make the masks that you wear, and then also these pink gems, which is another collectible, and that will help you defeat Typhoon later. Apparently, Typhoon also got the ability to raise an army of evil vegetables. I don't know where it came from, it's completely unclear, but Olaf is one of the vegetables risen. He's a boss, and he is just hilarious. But he's quite heavily featured in the scrolls. Since there is only one scroll per level, they have to be quite concise, and there's way too much ambiguity as to what's gone on. The player has to kind of create the story in their own mind, which saves the dev team resources in giving the game a clear storyline, but it's not good if a player is having to design it in their head. That's actually one of my pet peeves when it comes to game design, is when people leave it ambiguous so that the player has to do their work for them. It really winds me up personally, but that's just an opinion, it's not directly linked to this game. Anyway, in these scrolls, Kaze doesn't seem to be training with Hogo and Typhoon, so I really don't know where she fits into this puzzle outside of the friendship that she has. She doesn't appear to do any training, and I don't understand why the wise bunnies become pink gems, and why they help defeat Typhoon. I get Typhoon's the big bad guy, but, you know, whatever. I have created an idea in my head as to what's going on, but like I've just said, I'm not doing the devs' jobs for them. The story really is presented awfully, which wouldn't be a problem if the story wasn't so poor in itself. Kaze not being in the pictures takes away any sort of emotional investment that the player might have in the story, and there's just too many unanswered questions. Why do the masters become masks? Why does that augment your abilities? Why do the wise bunnies become pink gems? Why is the lizard lord banished and hidden away? It's just really badly presented and leaves too much for the player to try and work out in their own head. Alright, I'm calming down. Storyline is not the be-all and end-all of a good platformer game. And Kaze and the Wild Mask does perform very well as a platformer. It's a really good homage to some of the greats from the past. You know, you've got your Rayman, your Donkey Kong Country, those sort of games. This game really does bring that back in. It has great collectibles. They're distinct from each other, notably in their colour, their quantity, their value. The green collectibles, they have 2 per level, which is really interesting, but they lead to bonus stages, which will test your skills in a new or different way. They take place in some alternate universe environment thing, so they're different to the level themes, which just gives a little bit more freedom in what the level designers are gonna create in those areas, but they don't feel out of place. They kind of fit in just fine within the levels. So how does that fit into whether the game's fun or not? Well, you know, like I've said, the platforming's good, the collectibles are unique and interesting, and these are what really gave the game that sort of Donkey Kong Country feeling, and that was what made it amazing for me. It's really, really well implemented. The story is locked behind these collectibles, which I've already kind of spoken about, I guess, but there is also one other collectible that I wanted to talk about just a little bit, and I'm just not sure how I feel about it. I'm not going to consider it when it comes to actually scoring how fun the game is, and I'm thinking about the pink gems here. And the reason I'm not so sure about them is that they're just everywhere, they're dotted everywhere, and the only sort of visual completion you get for collecting all 100 in a level is that you get a pink gem when you finish the level, and it's highlighted at the level cleared screen. However, they actually unlock the true ending to the game, which is highlighted by the storyline. The wise bunnies gave their lives to become pink gems, and so collecting all of them somehow helps free Hogo. I don't know, it's story. It is a very touching scene, but it's the story and it's not great. I really liked it. I'm a big fan of collecting everything in the game, so I went through each level anyway and got 100 pink gems for each level as I progressed through the game. But as a game design point of view, it feels like it doesn't inform the player of the true value of the pink gems. I don't know where I stand on this, but it's an interesting conversation that I think is well worth having. If you've gained skills playing the game and you've got better playing the game, maybe it's good fun to come back and collect the pink gems. Again, I'd collected it all as I went through the game, so maybe I missed out there, but it's just an interesting open point, I think. But collectibles aren't the only part of a good platforming game. The other part of a good platforming game is, of course, platforming. And this game has a good variety of platforming challenges. I can't think of any 2 levels that use the same gimmick as you go through. There's some similarities, so for example, jelly will come up in a couple of levels, or winds may come up, but it's not used in the same way. And the platforming difficulty increases over the game, and to repeat myself, it does keep throwing unique challenges at you. Some of them aren't great, but with 4 worlds of 7 to 8 unique levels plus bonus rooms, there's always going to be a couple of duds. Once you've mastered that platforming, you want to highlight your success by setting the lowest time on each level. After beating a level, you have the option to run it against the clock. This removes all of the collectibles from the game and just sets you and the level one-on-one versus the clock. The times you have to beat aren't particularly challenging, and most players should be able to get the medals required, but I think this is a good thing in terms of accessibility. But there's a lot of optimization and potential to really open like a speedrunning category for these levels. My only issue is that it does highlight some of the biggest negative parts of the level design, and some levels just are not built for speed. I've highlighted this in my playthroughs when I was getting the gold medals. I've complained about it in those. I'll put an iCard in the top or something if you really want to go and watch it. But the long and short of it is there's just some sections of the game where you can go too fast, and it's not like you're stopping to avoid something, it's that you're going so fast that the environment catches up with you or ruins something. One thing they have done really well with this is the spin attack, which gives you a big boost of acceleration and then slows you right back down so you don't gain speed overall, so you don't just keep spinning constantly, you have to think about how you're going to use that spin attack. But it also means that there's situations where just running is the best option, and I think that balance is really well done. For me, I can't get over the fact the levels don't line up properly for fast players, but overall it's just such a fun game to play. It's a really good, enjoyable experience. As I'm sure you can understand, the game doesn't really add anything particularly groundbreaking to the genre. The storyline isn't unique, the abilities aren't inspired, it's just average. The boss design is really clever, but even the enemies being food products is something we've seen before in other games like Banjo-Kazooie and such. It would have been nice to see this game revive and modernise the genre by bringing something really unique to it. Sadly, it's just another game within that same group. There's nothing original or innovative. But just because the game doesn't bring anything new to the genre, it certainly doesn't mean it's not a great game or great value for money. I've got a decent 10 hours of gameplay out of this, and it sits at a price point at around £12 of the Queen's good money. For those who love the genre, there's replay value in trying to optimise your times on the levels, and there's a few achievements you have to work hard to get. Oops is one such example. I'd be really impressed if anyone got that by accident, but it's just one of those achievements. I've also done a guide for that, which I'll stick an iCard for if you're struggling with it. The game itself is so readily available. It's on Switch, Xbox, PS4, Steam, Stadia, it's just everywhere. And I think if you like platformers or you miss the 2D DK country games, this will certainly scratch that itch for you. I would have hoped there was more levels and worlds, and this shows in the poor usage of the shark and lizard masks in boss fights, and some of the way that levels don't seem to fit into their theme. Like I said, the toxic level's not on the toxic island, there's snow levels not in the snow island, it's just little bits around that. Overall though, I'd say the amount of game you get for a tenner is just incredible. Personally, I would have liked to have seen maybe 2 more islands, so you've got 1 island for base Kaze, 1 for each mask, and then 1 for the final island where you use all 4 masks, and then that extra world would have allowed the levels to be spread out a little bit more, but it would have obviously meant they would have had to create more levels. But I would have also liked to see what levels they created. The dev team was so imaginative in how they mixed their environments and the puzzle elements of platforming together, and like I said, they were all quite unique ideas with like a little bit of crossover just to make sure you're still improving on your skills. One thing that really frustrated me was how some of the interactions around the time trials were. There was one particular level where when you collected the time trial thing, you lost all of the collectibles like I said, which included your indicators for where to jump. This particular level that I'm talking about, I'll put it on the screen now, everything disappears. So you kind of got to guess where you're jumping, because all of the level all of the environment just falls off the screen and you're left with invisible platforms everywhere. Without the indicators, this level just becomes nearly impossible. I know there are little indicators around it, but I ended up just having to memorize a lot of the level, which was quite annoying. This frustration, however, pales in comparison to the sheer joy I got of the Dragon Mask. There's a level where you're being chased and you have to time your jumps and activate lights and deactivate lights, and it's just so much fun. It's a really good point where you build concepts you've already learned and then you use them as well. And like I said earlier, I love Olaf's characterization. I thought it was awesome. Overall, I thought this was a great game, and if you like 2D platformers, you'll love this game. If you're not sure or you're on the fence, I've got full gameplay on my channel. You can check out bits of that and then maybe pick it up yourself, or just enjoy living vicariously through someone else. But you'll very rapidly know if it's your sort of game or not. If it is your sort of game, let me know in the comments what your favourite part of 2D platformers are, or if it's not your sort of game, what could I do to make a 2D platformer that you'd be interested in? Either way, I have been Avalon, this has been Kaze and the Wild Masks, and I'll see you guys next time.